I wrote a book about my life named Moguldom. You can get more information about this book at moguldombook.com. I talk about acquiring a knowledge of self, self-determination, and building a business over 10 years. There are some gems in this book that you don't want to miss. One way to support the Go movement in this podcast is to go to moguldombook.com, buy the book on pre-sale to support the Go movement. Let's go. You're listening to Go with Jamarlin Martin. We have a go hard or go home approach as we talk to the leading tech leaders, politicians, and influencers. Let's go. Today we have Chrissa McFarlane on the show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Where did you grow up and how did you get into blockchain?
Those are two big jumps. So I grew up in New York City. I grew up in the Bronx. Family of immigrants, was born in Jamaica. Moved to New York City when I was about 4 years old. Was always had an affinity for science and technology and math. My goal as a little girl was to be in medicine, was to be a surgeon and help people. Went to a specialized science and technology high school. Ended up, doing pre-medicine courses at Cornell, and specializing in liberal arts. Decided that I wanted to learn more about entrepreneurship after dibbling in entrepreneur courses in undergrad. Went out to business school at Wake, got involved with health IT, then eventually startups after my post business school career. And then from there, the researcher in me, the researcher at heart, was like, okay, we have this big problem in healthcare. It's the third largest spend in our economy in terms of GDP. What's needed? So I started out trying to, based on my past experiences working in digital healthcare startups, telemedicine, looking at the problem, which was not having empowered patients, not having that patient engagement in the healthcare system, it all being run really by the payers and those who are dishing out the reimbursements for medical care. And decided that, the biggest problem was also, these electronic medical records that came to fame in the past 10, 15 years. But they were basically banks of health data. They didn't want to share it with anyone. So the core issue was, why, as a patient, do I not have access to my health data? Why am I having to request a fax in 2014, 2015 for my healthcare data? Had been following blockchain and just merged the two industries together way back when, before people weren't even thinking about, bringing blockchain to different industries.
You got into blockchain, of course, early, but is there anything kind of that would explain why you were so early ahead of everyone else in terms of blockchain?
I would say a part of it is, you can say luck or fate, you can, throw all these different words. It's like, you're in the right place at the right time. Opportunity. That's basically what it was. The fact that I was exposed so early on to, especially a growing and emerging industry, which is digital healthcare startups. And, that didn't exist 15 years ago. We really saw the rise of digital healthcare startups in 2011. So it was just all of these.
You just started hearing blockchain mentioning a little bit, kind of industry press or business press or...
No, not even.
So, but how did
it was just looking at how deep and loaded the electronic medical record field was, and really going deep into technology, cryptography, research in different types of technology that some people don't even know about today. I think that's what had stuck. With choosing that platform, looking at, we're going to solve this problem of bringing together disparate systems and what's out there, ledgers. And that's essentially what blockchain is. You're
diving into a problem in terms of digitizing medical records. And when you're investigating this with your curiosity, your original curiosity, you come across blockchain as a potential solution.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Okay. And you mentioned, blockchain is a ledger. For my grandma in Watts, California, how would you explain blockchain?
Great question. And there's different ways I always explain it to different audiences. Blockchain is essentially a electronic transaction method that keeps record of, transactions as they happen. And how we're using blockchain, we're using it for storage mechanisms. So the fact that we can now bring all these different servers together, but also track the files that are being stored there, and each file is given a unique identifier, which essentially is a person. It just brings up this entire new world of how we're managing data.
Yeah, so there's a lot of course, minefields with crypto, and I feel like you're very badass. You got your own coin. Like, hey, I got my own coin. But a lot of ICOs that have come out, they didn't take the position that they're securities. And so the SEC has kind of caught up with some of the innovation and have declared that, most of these ICOs are securities. And they need to be regulated under the SEC law, which complicates things, obviously. Did you come out that our token is a security, or did you come out with the consensus view at that time, we're not a security?
Yeah, so we were pretty early before SEC decided to, put the hammer down. We came out as a utility token. We did our token sale outside of the U.S.
How much did you raise on your first one?
Our token sale netted over $7 million in less than 3 days. So we were pretty early 2017. We decided we were going to do a token sale the end of 2016, prepared for it, launched our pre-sale March of 2017, and then opened it up in the end of May, which lasted roughly less than 3 days.
Okay, got it. So you raised $7 million, and it's time to build a team. You have the capital. How do you go about building your team at Patientory?
Well, yeah, the fact that we just had this big influx of cash at the time in a space that didn't exist, it was difficult. I'll be honest. It was also difficult to find healthcare people or just technologists who would grasp the concept of what we were doing.
Then you got to do it in ATO.
Yeah. So, we brought on people. Some people stayed, some people didn't. It was finding that, right fit for the product while we continue to test in the architecture and the infrastructure. I think now we're pretty in a good space where we see now it's more of, okay, the customers has also catched on. We've done a year and a half of market education. You've seen all these conferences pop up that now focus on healthcare, and we see all these different use cases. So we have a better market to start to employ a lot of, the testing that would make us successful.
So your token, for the audience, a token would be comparable to stock on the NASDAQ or New York Stock Exchange. But your token price, right? Everyone's crazy about crypto, ICOs. There's a gold rush. Everybody's making these money. Everybody's like driving these Ferraris. Does your morale at your company go up and down with the market cap and the token price? Are you seeing a correlation between
it did in the beginning. I think now we're at a mature state where it's white noise at the moment. In the beginning, it was like we brought on people that, because we had raised so much money and we had this token, like that's what they focused on, like from marketing. We want to see, more people come into our Slack group or a Telegram group and talk about, our token, because it's so great, even though on our roadmap, our platform wasn't going to be released until like the next 15 months. So, and you had the people in the community who were like, oh, it needs to go up more. And we're like, we can't comment on that. Like, that's not. So we, with all the good news, the bad news, it affected the team more because I guess it was so new and they just weren't prepared and they couldn't separate it from the actual core business that we were trying to sell.
So the Securities and Exchange Commission, they dropped the hammer down on ICOs. And I imagine that there's so much fraud with ICOs. The bad smell of scam ICOs, you get caught up into that. And it makes things dramatically tougher. And possibly you have to think about optimizing your legal structure. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely had a lot of a high burn for legal, not only, just looking at, de-risking the business. But then I think it just boils down to, again, having a community where you're constantly updating them, you're being transparent. That's the, really only way to, get ahead of that. But yeah, I mean, and again, it's aligning yourself. We built a board of advisors, a board of directors, with credibility and, experience behind them. So we were able to de-risk a lot of the business from that as well.
How big is your team now?
We're pretty conservative. We're about 4 people.
Okay,
so
that's
4
good.
or 5 people.
That's
We
good.
didn't
Keeping
get
it
caught
lean,
up in the we're
Hire
gonna
crazy,
grow
yeah.
3,000%. No.
And what's the path to profitability? How much kind of runway do you have until you get profitable?
I would say another 18 months.
Another 18 months.
Yeah.
And then how, the market response, do you have paying clients now?
We're still pre-revenue. We have pilots.
Okay.
So that's essentially, we don't consider them as converted customers. So we don't track it that way. We just track it as how many pilots are able to, actually start using the platform.
Okay. And is your token, in terms of the SEC guidance that came out, do you term it a security, or how did that finish, or is it still evolving in terms of?
I think it's pretty much still evolving. Again, we were before, I think they ruled anything before July 2017. You had like a grandfathered clause for that.
So
but
you're
we're
still,
definitely...
you still view the Patientory token as a utility token?
Yeah, because it's fueling our platform. Like, no one owns any stock in our company. It's not something that we sell as well. It's part of that open permission blockchain network, which we don't even own or govern, right? It's owned by the members of the blockchain.
Is that a controversial view in terms of folks still claiming that, hey, this is a utility, but the conservative view, of course, hey, this is really a security?
Yeah, I mean, it's always going to be there. They say Bitcoin is a utility, and they've said Ethereum is a utility, and then they said it's a security. So I think there's just still that, adoption or just more work and regulation that needs to go into it.
What blockchain projects are you excited about that you're seeing out there that are really interesting and that, our audience may want to take a look at? Are there any kind of projects that are really interesting to you?
I'm really excited to see how Ripple has grown. People say it's not a blockchain. It's a different
centralized.
Yeah. But I remember seeing them back in 2017 before we did our, they've come a long way, and it's interesting to see how much adoption from the financial markets they've gotten. So I watch them pretty closely.
And do you see any evidence that, companies are scaling with blockchain where they're solving problems, not necessarily I want to make the most money and kill everything in my way, like a Google or Facebook, but they really are looking at the problems in society, inequality, and they're using blockchain. They apply it to the solution.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's really a shift in society on how we're looking at business on a whole, and then this new the concept of globalization and really making the world smaller through network effects. So I think blockchain has a lot of good, even though it, and that's with good technology. You have a bad side, you have a good side, but, a lot of the projects they've helped refugees, who are unbanked, have access to assets. These people go into a bank, they would never have given a bank account. And then just the tracking of food we see in China, who has a big trust issue around the food that they sell to the public. So we definitely see it.
Yeah, and I remember one of the co-founders of Ethereum saying that they're working on a project that involves sustainable fishing in terms of tracking the ecosystem there. Do you have a view on where Bitcoin is going to go within the next couple of years? Do you feel like people are going to get wealthy by riding a Bitcoin bull market in the future? Or are you
I
more
try to
bearish?
stay neutral, but I think, Bitcoin is just the beginning. I think we definitely needed Bitcoin to open up this new era, as we call, of digital commerce, digital economy taken to Web3. And we needed that first use case. And I think Bitcoin is just that first use case. Whether it's going to stay number one in 20 years, we don't know. But I think the use case that will be prevalent is going to affect, as many people
You believe
across
it
the
could
planet.
easily go to 100,000 in the future?
Not
Let's say 5
necessarily.
years.
No.
You think that sounds crazy, that Bitcoin
Yeah.
could go to 100,000? See, the reason I think Bitcoin could go to 100,000 is, of course, you go through financial crisis, 2000, then 2008, the Federal Reserve, they're just printing money, and they call it, of course, quantitative easing, but it's just an experiment. They don't have any history with it, but they're desperate to hold up the economy. And so they're printing money and doing these experiments. And, with the mortgage crisis, people said, real estate always goes up. Look at the history, right?
Yeah.
It could never crash. It always goes up. And of course, the experts, the scientists, they were wrong. But I believe at some point, fiat money, printing money out of nothing and paying off your own debts with your own money, just, monopoly board, unlimited money. If that system was to surprise the economists and the experts, if that system was to fail, like it's failed in Venezuela or Zimbabwe, or you see the inflation in Argentina or Turkey, if the idea of this money printing that's not backed by anything, used to be backed by gold, if people start to question that would, I believe, would be a huge run for gold, but potentially people can start looking at other monetary systems that are not controlled by a central government. And so I think the bull case for Bitcoin, I think, is in part based on the people's confidence in the financial system in fiat money. And I think if that is questioned, Bitcoin could explode.
But would it get to 100,000? I mean, there should be a limit in.
Well, 100,000,
State.
what I would say is because of the scarcity, meaning that the alternative, there's not a lot of alternative to fiat money, but because there's a limited number of Bitcoins, it's going to be the best option of the cryptos. So I'm just saying there's not a lot of competition in terms of fiat money that governments are printing. They're buying stocks. They're doing all these weird things with money in these experiments. And then there's Bitcoin that has a limited supply. And so if confidence, just a little bit of confidence is transferred over from fiat money to Bitcoin, we saw a appetizer of that when it ran at 20,000.
I see.
At least I believe. What are the next steps for your business? Like, what are you focused on over the next 2 years?
Adoption, right? So getting healthcare organizations using the platform, developing use cases on the platform, whether that's our startup company or other companies using the network as well.
And for our audience who are interested in developing blockchain-based businesses or platforms, what have you learned that you can share with them in terms of, hey, you need to know about this when you get into this game, you're thinking about, scaling your company. What do they need to know based on your experience and mistakes, of course, that you've seen?
Yeah, I think it's really being bold on having an ecosystem mindset, so definitely not only aligning yourself with your ideal customers, but thinking outside of that. So whether that's government entities, academic partners, institutions, because I think with blockchain, it's definitely a network effect, and it's it's a collaboration technology. If we're going to be successful.
Who created Bitcoin? What's your theory?
Of course, it's Satoshi. Everyone knows that.
Yeah, but when you peel that back, who created Bitcoin? But do you have a theory though?
If I have a theory?
Yeah, because of course that name was that name is fake, right? So so there's a white paper that put out, and he says, hey, we need an alternative system.
Yeah.
Look at the government bailout of the banks, this financial system, and then there's this great technology, but the people don't know who created it. And do you have a theory?
I don't have a theory. I have multiple theories based on what's already out there in terms of conspiracies,
Can you share some of those conspiracy theories?
People say it's the CIA, the UN, it's, DARPA. Or they even say
DARPA, explain that for the audience.
Basically a science and technology intelligence agency. They actually created
Connected
the first...
to which state or country?
It's connected to a series of countries. I don't think it's independent. They actually created the internet, back in the 70s. They had the first internet network.
But they say that the U.S. military, that was created inside the U.S. military, the internet. But I guess I'm trying to reconcile. DARPA is connected to a lot of folks. At least the U.S. military gets a lot of credit for creating the internet.
They're a part of it.
But the theory, other theories.
They said it was Google, Apple, Facebook, and Amazon that created it.
Yeah, so the
GAFA companies.
Yeah, from my perspective, I think there's a strong chance this was created by an intelligence agency. Was it the United States? Was it Russia?
China.
Potentially China. When you look at the security features, it can't be broken, meaning that people have predicted all these type of security things and things are going to happen. This stuff, Bitcoin, cannot be broken, at least so far. Right?
What I heard somewhere, it takes the size of like the sun or multiple suns, the energy needed to actually, break the mechanisms that create the network.
And to your point of where Bitcoin came from and whether it was created by an intelligence agency, the United States or someone else, they point to the military-grade cryptography, meaning that this is not something, hey, you're at a tech company and you can create this stuff. This stuff has a rhythm and quality to it that's associated with top-level government intelligence work, yeah. Would you say 50% or more that it was created by a government?
Or does it have to? I think there's a step above a government.
And explain that. You're like, man, you about to take us to the Illuminati. You're like, about to get deep in it.
No, I'm just saying it may not have been sanctioned by a government, but it may have been, organizations or people that work on behalf of governments.
But what would that look like? So if it wasn't created by the government, it's created by a government. What entity? Like
because the fact, if you look at it, we have so much. It can't just be one government. We have so much buy-in from different countries all over the world.
So it could be alliances.
Exactly.
And why?
Again, this is the next. We're stepping into the next wave of industrialism. So, in 2017, the World Economic Forum, the whole theme of that was the fourth industrial revolution of data, and data is not just subject to one particular country or government. The way we do business, people, immigration back and forth. So it's definitely, an agreement between different countries to be able to see the success of this technology move forward.
Okay, I want to thank Chrissa for coming on the show. Where can people check you out online?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn. LinkedIn.com, Chrissa McFarlane. I'm also on Twitter, Chrissa McFarlane. And you can check out our companies, Patientory.com. Our app is on the Apple Store. And we have an ecosystem association, the Patientory Association, which manages our token, and that's at ptoy.org.
Make sure you check out Chrissa online. She's a trailblazer in the blockchain space. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, everybody, for listening to Go. You can check me out at Jamarlin Martin on Twitter, and also come check us out at moguldom.com. That's moguldom.com. Be sure to subscribe to our daily newsletter. You can get the latest information on crypto, tech, economic empowerment, and politics. Let's go.